Okay, so let's talk about Joel Guy Jr. Whew. This one was a doozy and one that you had to prescribe very um uh it was hard to listen to, and you gave us a warning of that. So if you listen to it, you probably remember it. This was a case about Joel Guy Jr., who on Thanksgiving weekend of 2016 murdered his mother and father in a very gruesome way, which I don't know if you have some more details on that. I don't know if people want more details on that. But tell us a little bit about why you picked this case.
So I picked this case one. It was a pretty popular law and crime, trial law and crime, obviously, is my partner company, and they live streamed it. And so, when looking through their trial library, I came across this one and assigned it. There, it is a very gruesome case, but I think what fascinated me the most about it is the defense or the non-defense of it, which I'll get into in just a second. As far as gruesome details, just to go back to that for a second, that is definitely something that I do not like to cover. And when I did come across this trial, it occurred to me to not cover it, just kind of due to that reason. Um, I don't know if it's just my own comfort level. I just always think that you never know who's listening.
Right.
And if I'm going to be talking about a public trial for sure, but if I'm going to be talking about something extremely tragic that happened to this family, how would I feel if I was listening to a podcast and they were glorifying those gruesome details, or they were exploiting them, or like, setting it to like creepy music or something like that. So that's just something that, just a personal preference of mine, I don't really like to get into. I felt like with this one, it's important to know that he stabbed his father and mother multiple times. I don't believe I included the exact amount of times in the episode, but he stabbed his father at least 42 times and his mother at least 30 times. He then cut away their clothes, put down plastic sheeting, dragged their bodies into the upstairs master bathroom, and then quite obviously dismembered them, which, you get that in the episode, I think, because obviously the prosecutor in her opening statements made reference to the fact that he was cooking his mother's head in a pot on the stove, which is just awful and like heartbreaking, and just, you know, it was just awful. Another detail that came out in testimony was that he put his father's head face down into like a bin of chemicals, and that when they found him, he was unrecognizable because all of the flesh had been dissolved. And that was according to the testimony. Obviously, like I said, he cut his mother's head off and put it on a stove. I mean, it was just horrific. But like I said, I was fascinated by the why of it all.
Right.
So the prosecution said that it was over money because his parents were about to cut him off, and that certainly may be. But when I read about the gruesome details and heard the testimony, I don't know about you, but I was sort of expecting an insanity defense,
Yeah.
that they would say that he was mentally ill at the time, but they didn't. And in fact, his defense barely presented any sort of defense at all. So, since there was nothing about that in the trial, I did do a little bit of research to see if I could find anything in the news about any sort of talk about him having any kind of mental illness or being tested for it. And there was nothing. According to WBIR Channel 10 News, they said that there was no proof that has ever been presented to show that he is mentally ill. And the article states that lawyers and family members say that he's intelligent and knows exactly what he's doing. So, another thing I found interesting, and this may be related to that, is if you remember the letter he sent to the judge before his sentencing, where he requested to be moved because he wanted to gouge out another inmate's eyes. And in the letter, which I don't believe I put the entirety of the letter in the episode, said, quote, "I'm writing this letter because I don't want to end up with a disciplinary infraction or worse, more criminal charges, nor do I logically believe that this gentleman deserves to be blind. I don't know what to do. I shouldn't be allowed access to another person while they're unconscious." Now, the prosecutor said that this letter was a ploy to get his own jail cell by himself, and the judge seemed to think the same. So I don't know what your thoughts were on that, but is he really this? I mean, he is, but was he really this manipulative, I guess, that he could say something like that in order to get his own jail cell by himself? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
If he was in there for a non-violent crime, if he was just your run-of-the-mill criminal who's then saying, I'm scared that I'm going to do this or that, I need to be moved, then I might buy that, he's just it's just a ploy to get his own cell. This guy clearly, in my opinion, has something going on. There's something there that makes the fact that he didn't have an insanity plea is mind-boggling to me, because you just don't do this to people that your family, people that you care about, that care about you. And to do it in such a callous way. There was one detail that he went, as his mother's head was cooking, he went to go buy some potato salad and come back. There's something missing there. That's not a normal, healthy person. And so because of his history, I do think that that was him saying, hey, I'm going to do something that's not good, and I'm trying to give you a heads up on it. And at the end of the day, either way, I think people should listen to him and take that as a call for help versus just an attention grabbing attempt.
In other words, so you feel like he probably would gouge out his
Maybe I think prison probably does crazy things to people, and they sit there in their own thoughts, and maybe he was like, okay, I've done this once and I don't want to do it again. Not saying necessarily he didn't show any remorse per se, but maybe this was his attempt to say, I don't want to do this again to somebody.
Yeah. Well, the prosecutor and the judge do not agree with you, Brittnee.
That's okay. They are far more experienced than I, just offering a little bit of a different angle here.
So the last point I want to bring up here is that prior to sentencing, it's customary for state probation officials to conduct a pre-sentence investigation. You've probably heard of that the court can use when sentencing a defendant. So according to a letter that the Department of Corrections submitted to the court, when the official went to speak with Joel Guy Jr. in jail, he refused to see her. The official tried to explain what the visit was for, and he refused. She then contacted his attorney, and the attorney said that the pre-sentencing report was irrelevant, that Joel did not have to talk to her, and that they would not be doing the interview. So as a result, a pre-sentencing report was never done. So I just thought that was a little detail that was pretty interesting and relevant also.
Very bizarre case.
Very bizarre case.
I mean, at the end of the day, to do that over money, I think that was another thing that didn't sit well with me. His parents were essentially supporting him his whole life. Okay, so what if they said, we're going to cut you off? They said they were going to cut him off before.
Yeah. I mean, it's another case where, again, I don't think we'll ever know the why he did it, but I mean, he did it.
Right.
So